Welcome to Oyate Today. Oyate in Lakota means people. Brought to you by Native Sun News Today. Hi, welcome to Oyate Today. I am your host, Richie Richards. Oyate Today is produced by Jackie and Tim Gallego, an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe. The show is sponsored by Native Sun News Today. Tonight we have a very special guest in Miss Lily Mendoza. She is a Cheyenne River Sioux tribal member and a Rapid City-based business owner. She is also the founder and executive director of the Seamus Project. Part of her businesses that she owns is the Word Carrier Trading Post, which is an online book outlet, as well as the Birdcage Bookstore, which is currently located here in the Racing Magpie. As founder of Seamus Project, she has two projects that she's currently working on with them. One of them being the Native Ride Cycling Club and the first annual Indigenous Riders Festival. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. Ms. Mendoza has also been the chairperson in the past of the Office of Indian Education, and back in 1996 she was a delegate of the Democratic National Convention, as well as she ran for Senate in 1996 as well. She's also been on the Rapid City Chamber as on the Cultural Committee, and she's been a board member at the Journey Museum. Ms. Mendoza, I want to thank you for being here with us tonight, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And the contributions that you've made to Rapid City and our community. I just have a few questions we'll go over. And so when did you start Word Carrier Trading Post? I understand you travel to reservations, to the schools on the reservations for Native American book fairs. And can you tell us a little bit more about this particular project?
Sure. We started Word Carrier Trading Post, I'm saying like maybe 11 years ago. And myself and my husband, we really saw a need to provide access to literacy to reservation schools and communities. So we've done that the last 11 years. And what we do is we travel in our big diesel truck and we go into communities and we set up what we call Native American book fairs. And one of the main focuses when we do this is to provide resources for teachers in the schools. And what happens along with that is schools will buy books for their children. So we're kind of like Scholastic, except for we're Native American. And so we take with us about 500 different book titles. And we open it to the community so community can come in and have access to books. And so it's really important for myself, having been in the book business for the last, I would say, 15 years. I saw a need for that in our communities, so that's why we came up with the whole idea, the concept of doing Native American book fairs in schools.
So you mentioned the access to literacy, and can you talk about the importance of what role that plays in our reservation schools and in our reservation communities?
Well, I think one of the most important things is that a lot of our stories now are in books. And so what we've seen going into communities is that a lot of families see their families on the cover of books, reading the books. And so it's really a good thing to be able to see them be excited about literacy. We've had an opportunity to work in schools where we've seen some of the students in the schools start reading, from elementary, middle school, and actually seen them go from reading something very basic that they select from our books that we take out to the level of reading college level books. It was exciting for us to see. We kind of graduated with some of those students. So they're reading very, very basic books all the way up to picking out selections like Vine Deloria books. So that's really exciting for us to see. So we're kind of really accomplishing what we want to do in those Native American communities.
Do you see, or have you seen kind of a more or less some of the authors and books that have stood out amongst those books that are, those very early age books on into their elementary and middle school years that have kind of stood out throughout this process?
Well, I think one of the main ones, especially elementary and the lower level reading, would be S.D. Nelson, and he's actually enrolled on the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. and he's very prolific in his writing. You know, he's Crazy Horse's Vision, Red Cloud, different books. He writes books about several of our different chiefs in our society. And so, and those stories are really based on the historical viewpoint. And so I guess I would say S.D. Nelson from lower level reading. And then as we get into middle school, we can see books being purchased by, you know, Joseph Brozac, Virginia Driving Hawk Snevy, and then also Don Montello. And he's kind of a combination of elementary, kind of middle school, because we have a lot of our reservation students, Native American students, that struggle with reading. And so that's a big part of what we do too, is so that if they can read about themselves, they'll be better at reading. And then as we get up into the upper levels, you know, we still have books, especially by Tim Gallego. It's always good to have his book available about boarding schools.
Sure.
Vine Deloria, and Joseph Marshall. He's a really, really big one. And also Sherman Alexie is a big one when we go out.
Good, good. Now, as far as the Birdcage Bookstore, could you tell us a little bit about the founding of this bookstore? I understand you do some outreach into the community with different book discussions, and kind of what role that plays in our community as far as having those open discussions
Sure.
about some of these books that are, you know, really culturally invested in some of the issues that we're dealing with today and in the past, actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I was very fortunate to have Racing Magpie, Peter Strong, and Mary Bordeaux. I had approached them about setting up a bookstore, and that's kind of something that I've always wanted to do, is have my own storefront. And we've spent a lot of years traveling and going out there in communities, and people asking, do you have a bookstore? I'm coming to Rapid for the weekend, can I stop in? And it's like, well, I don't have a bookstore, you know. And so I got up one morning and thought, I want to open up a bookstore. So I got a hold of both Mary and Peter and sat down with them, and they were very welcoming, and before long they said, sure, we want you here. And so came up with the name Birdcage Bookstore. I collect bird cages, and so that's kind of where I got the name from.
Nice.
And so in addition to doing books, it's a mercantile as well. So what I try and do is have like local, there's a beekeeper, have her honey in there. I have the Cheyenne River Youth Project. I have some of their foods that they can also in the store. Ribbon skirts. I really try to look at getting those kinds of products in besides the book, and offer fair trade with the peoples too, because that's really important.
Oh, yeah.
And what it's also allowed me to do in that space is to create a safe space to have tough discussions around books. And we find that on a lot of the books, especially Native American books that are out there, there are a lot of tough issues that those books bring to front. And so it's great for me to have that venue to do that and talk about those difficult issues in that space.
One of those books might be You Don't Have to Say You Love Me by Sherman Alexie, and I understand you've had a discussion around that book. How did that go?
Well, most recently we've had that book discussion, and my book discussions, I just want to mention, are led by Chris Bordeaux. And we had, you know, anywhere from 15 to 20 people attend those book discussions. The thing about Sherman Alexie's book is that he puts everything out there.
Yeah,
You
no
know,
holds barred sometimes.
He puts everything out there. And what was good about that discussion is, and we've heard from people in the group, is exactly that. And they say, well, it's not to say that our lives are really hard and they're always like this. There are some good things. But as we went around the circle, people could share some of those experiences. And some of those experiences are really, non-natives are really kind of, I've never lived like that or had those experiences. And so for us, I think it's good for them to hear that, so they would have a little bit more empathy if they're a teacher in schools.
Sure.
What some of those children are going through. And then also that some of those children aren't going through that. And so we have to really kind of look at the positive. So it was very a wonderful group discussion, and so we're going to continue it on. We didn't finish it.
Good. That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that, actually. And I'm glad that those conversations open up much deeper discussions and what's really going on in our communities. We're going to take a break right now, Ms. Mendoza, but when we come back, we'll learn a little bit more about her career and what she's currently involved with in other projects as well. So we'll be back after a word with our sponsors.
Closed captioning for Oyate Today, brought to you by West River Ear, Nose, and Throat.
Clark had joint replacement surgery 6 months ago. To his grandson, he is still the MVP. Black Hills Surgical Hospital, bringing more life to your years.
You know, it's really busy in the coffee house, not just in the morning, but all day long. And it's really important that we serve our customers hot coffee that's ready for them when they're ready for it.
We get that, Michelle. And our team at Black Hills Energy will make sure you have the electricity you need to keep that Java nice and hot. Speaking of hot Java, how about a cup for the road? Black Hills Energy. Life sponsored by Energy.
You can't predict life's ups and downs. You just give it all you've got to stay on top. But it's easier with a partner like Security First Bank. Since 1898, we've been riding with you through the country's biggest ups and downs. And this is where we'll stay. Security First Bank, a relationship you can count on. Member FDIC.
The aftermath from the recent hurricanes and tropical storms have devastated thousands of communities. You can help the millions of Americans who are affected by these storms. Show your support today. Go to our app or blackhillsfox.com/hurricane relief and make a donation today.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today. Our guest tonight is Ms. Lily Mendoza. We've had a very interesting discussion as some of the projects and businesses that she's involved with currently. And I just want to continue on with what you had mentioned and talked about with the Seamus Project, As Executive Director of the Seamus Project, can you give some of the history of this nonprofit and the efforts that's involved with this particular nonprofit and what you're hoping to do in the future, what you've done in the past, and I guess what you currently have going on as well?
Sure. You know, the nonprofit was created in November of 2016. And we created a nonprofit because myself and my family and just other people in community, we've been doing some projects. And so we were at that point where, well, we better start a nonprofit now because we want to be able to get donations and get some grants in to fund some of the projects that we've been doing because we've just kind of been paying for those on our own. And so we've got together a board of 6 members. 2 of them are non-native and 4 are native. And they work in different arenas here in Rapid City. And I guess I selected those people because they're good people and they really do support the work that I do. And when I say I do, I would say my family does. And so that's why we decided that we should create the nonprofit. And so we have some different programs that we run under the nonprofit.
So are your board members part of, are they educators or business owners or?
You know what? Some of them are educators, some of them are artists.
Oh, nice.
Some of them work in community with other organizations. I have a person that is a grant writer. I also have a person that's an attorney so that, you know, if anything comes up, she can help us with our bylaws and those sorts of things. And then I also have a couple of people that are young because it's really important for me to model the work that we're doing because they'll take over on it when I'm done with it. And then we also have an advisory committee, and our advisory committee is my children. They all grew up here in Rapid City, and so they've all done the work together with me. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That youth involvement is important and key to a lot of the things that we're doing in our community as leaders, as community organizers. And so what role does the youth play with this particular project? I mean, how do they influence what you're doing?
Well, when I say youth, they're like in their 30s. Okay,
oh, okay.
To me, they're youth, okay?
Yeah.
But you know what? people that age see things really differently from how we see things, and a lot of that too is technology.
Yeah.
And how to work through that technology and use that as a benefit to the organization. And so I really do utilize them to, website development. And they live in a whole different arena out there in the community, so they're kind of my eyes and ears as to things that we need to be doing. And like I said before, it's really important for them to understand how we work, as older people, or elderly, I guess I can say, and what work needs to be done in this community.
So it's multi-generational,
Yeah,
those efforts.
exactly.
Definitely,
Exactly.
definitely. This past summer in July, you had the first annual Indigenous Writers Festival. And as far as the festival itself, what was the idea behind that? How did that come about? What was the goal for that? And what do you see in the future for this particular festival? I know that you were interested in doing some themes for future festivals.
Sure.
So if you could kind of touch on where this Indigenous Writers Festival is going and where you'd like to see it going in the future.
The idea came from, first of all, from my daughter. She lives in Minneapolis, and in 2016, they were doing Indigenous Authors Day in Minnesota and in Canada. And so what she did was she called me and said, "Mom, we should do this in Rapid City, And so I said, "Sure, we can," because we can, So we had a proclamation, and both Jackie and Tim Gallego were there for that, I was so much appreciated. So we had that proclamation. And from that day, I kind of talked about that we need to have our own writers festival for our own Indigenous people. And I think for me, looking over at Tim, he kind of nodded, yeah, so that gave me the go-ahead to say, okay, it's okay to do this. And so then from that, we created the first annual Indigenous Writers Festival. And we really focused on, in memory of the Battle of Little Greasy Grass. And so that was our main theme. And then also Blackout Speaks name change to Harney Peak, because that was a huge issue here in the state of South Dakota, of course.
Yeah.
So we had a huge discussion on that. And what was interesting is that our panel consisted of 5 different people. What was interesting is that none of those people really had talked to each other through the whole process change. So this was the first time for them to even actually meet each other. So that was really interesting, to see. And so with that, we had a great turnout. We're looking at the future, probably next summer, to do the festival and feature Native women authors, Indigenous women authors. And then just other things that we're going to feature throughout every year. Get input from people that attend, And it was really good for them to see. It's really good to see all of the Indian people there, Native Indigenous people there. And they're in the lead. They're doing this. They're taking ownership, and that's really important. Really, really important for me.
And that's exciting that you're going to be stressing the role women writers play in this movement. I think earlier we talked about, or you had mentioned that these young readers and these young students are being introduced to their stories from their reservations,
Sure.
from their perspectives. And so when we talk about bringing in women for this particular, for these future events, how important is that for this movement in general?
Well, it's very important. A lot of our not only Native women, but young people. Who is Ella Deloria? Who is that? And I can even say who is. They could probably say who is Virginia Driving Hawk Sneevy? So there's a whole generation of our own Native kids that don't know about these people and don't know that they really have access to them, especially with Virginia. Excuse me. So that's really important. We need to continue to share the current and past history of our women.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, we're going to take a break, Ms. Mendoza, but when we get back, I want to talk to you a little bit more about the Seamus Project, the founding of it, and that personal journey that this project has taken for you. So we'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
When I'm here, I win.
This fall, with a stay and play package, one great price lets you experience the best that Prairie Wind has to offer. Great gaming, delicious food, and a one-night stay. Only $99.99 Sunday through Thursday, $149.99 Friday and Saturday. Only at
Prairie Wind Casino. Feel the wind.
Native Sun News has been voted the best weekly newspaper in its class for 2015 by the South Dakota and North Dakota Newspaper Associations. You can find a copy of the Native Sun News at many businesses and vending machines in Rapid City and the surrounding area, and on all 9 reservations. We publish every Wednesday, so advertisers and subscribers can reach our diverse readership by calling 605-721-1266. The Native Sun News covers the other side of the story.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today, and our guest tonight is Miss Lily Mendoza. We've had a great discussion so far. We've learned about her bookstores and her involvement with literacy within our communities, both urban and in reservation communities as well. Ms. Mendoza, I understand that obviously Seamus was your son. Seamus passed in 2012. The Seamus Project is named in his honor. Obviously this has been a very personal and somewhat spiritual journey for you to commit to these projects in his name and in his honor, basically. Can you tell us a little bit more about this experience for you in regards to a mother not only losing her son, but wanting to carry on in honor of his name?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I lost my son in 2012 to type 1 diabetes, and he got that when he was 6 years old. So it was a real struggle for him. And so when we lost him, it was really, not only for a mother, but for his brothers and sisters, it was really difficult to get through that grieving process. And so as a mother, I had to kind of figure out what I needed to do to help them through that. And because I didn't want to forget him, you know, because that's what happens sometimes is I can't remember them anymore, what they used to do, those sorts of things. So we started out with our Native Rights Cycling Club to get my sons out and doing something. And what we've kind of found out from cycling is it gives you opportunity to ride by yourself or with other people, but just to kind of be there and think about your life, what's going on, those sorts of things. So we started the Native Rights Cycling Club, and it gave them something to work on in memory of him. And so that was so we put that under the Seamus Project. And so every year we do a ride from Bear Butte to Bear Lodge in memory of him, and then we look at an organization to donate to. And so we do that, and then also the Writers Festival is part of what we came up with in his memory. What's good about the project is that we get to mention his name every day, and that's very, very healing, because it's like he's still here, you know, and we're doing this work for him. And that's a good feeling for myself and for my children. So that's why we came up with the Seamus Project.
Could you talk a little bit more about the rides? I understand you just mentioned that you donate some of the proceeds or some of you fundraise for various projects, but could you talk about the rides, where they're located, any future rides, some of the past donations that you've made to the different organizations? Sure.
Last year we raised money for Rural American Initiatives. We were able to raise $4,000. This year we're raising monies for Pathfinder, an organization on the Crow Creek Reservation that houses women from human trafficking. And anytime we do any kind of fundraising, our goal is to raise $7,665. That is the total number of days that Seamus was alive with us. So that's always our goal whenever we raise monies, to do that. So that's what we're doing. And then we take rides throughout the years. Out the year, we go to Badlands Loop, we go on the Mickelson Trail, and we hope to start opening up chapters across the country in different Native communities, as well as we really invite non-Natives to participate with us. Building those kinds of relationships is good for the community, and it's good for us.
And good for the health of those that participate.
Of course, yeah.
Yes. You had talked about this being kind of a spiritual experience on some level. When you're out there riding, you're with a group of people, but I'm sure that the ride itself, you're on a bike by yourself, you're alone, you're experiencing some of those emotions. What is those rides like for you particularly?
Well, you know, the first year that we did it, it was very, very, very spiritual. And so for us, when you're riding out there, we get strength from those that we've lost. And so it's really important for us. I know there's times when I'm having a difficult time riding, and there's these long rides. I call for their help.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a big part of it too.
Ms. Mendoza, you wanted to close with our discussion tonight with an excerpt from a book that you had brought called Grassland, and with the author being Lyndall Hasselstrom. So if you could share with us that particular excerpt and what that means for you and why you wanted to share it with us tonight.
Scientists speak of a community of plants and animals that inhabit any particular environment. I believe community includes plants, animals, and people, and the land and the water. What else? Perhaps the ethics of the place and the belief of the citizens. Ethics does, I believe, have a role in my definition of community, and locally at least, I believe I see ethical community. Many of us would not agree on political actions on a broad scale, but if we see a fire on a neighbor's land, we fight it even if he doesn't vote as we do or attend the same church. If we see a car wreck, we stop to help without reading the political bumper sticker. Speaking for myself, I lie down in the American Legion Hall to give blood, nodding at the woman in the neighboring chair, with respect, even if I clicked hide posts from this person on Facebook last night.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That concludes our show for tonight. Ms. Mendoza, I want to really say thank you for the work that you're doing in our community and coming and sharing that with our viewers. So that closes our show. I want to thank you for I want to thank our sponsors, and I want to thank you as viewers for tuning in and making Oyate Today a part of your night.
You've been watching Oyate Today, brought to you by Native Sun News Today.